The flagship of House Seaworth sailed through the Bay of Seals and into the mouth of the last river. Constant wind changes had challenged the Onion Knight's seaworthiness. The Seaworth sails groaned against the northern winds as they sailed up the last river to the last hearth. Samwell Tarly was relieved to be off the high seas and into the mouth of the river. Samwell never properly strengthened his sea legs. His stomach constantly reminded him of his true nature. The journey upriver was much more pleasing to the Lord of the Reach, as the lone tower of the last hearth became visible over the horizon. The summer snow relentlessly deposited itself upon the north for the past 2 weeks. Sam had spent several years in the far north. Rarely had he seen so much snowfall during a summer such as this.
My lord seems to prefer the river to the open ocean.
My stomach has yet to settle. But for a different reason, Sir Davos.
Not an envious position you find yourself in. Mine own son differed from myself on a multitude of matters.
Sir Davos finished with a surprising positive tone. Sam guessed he had come to terms with his only son's death in the many years that had passed since. Still, Sam couldn't help but surmise that Sir Davos had some fatherly advice he was intent on sharing.
I learned very little from my own father, least of all, how to father. My ignorance reared its head during my last interaction with my son.
Would either of you consider each other's actions to be unforgivable?
Far from it. Still I remain pessimistic.
And apparently foolish as well.
Samwell was taken aback by Sir Davos's forwardness, but given his own failures as a father, perhaps the Onion Knight could provide something, anything that Samwell lacked.
Forgive me, Lord Tarly. That was brash. Would you grant me the honor of taking an old man's views into account for a moment?
Of course I would, good sir. I dare say I considered asking your opinion on the matter. However, I decided against it, to prevent reopening old wounds.
Your candor precedes you, Lord Tarly. You yourself have lost a son. The death of a child is a wound that truly never heals, I'm sorry to report. My own son died in battle nearly 20 years ago.
Mother! Get down!
I can still see the look in his eyes before he realized it was all coming to an end. It is unnatural, a father burying his son. Upon my own death, I'd imagine a healthy Mathos would smile knowing this is how it was supposed to be, a son burying his father.
Sam had never thought of life in this way. A father would never know what his son would look like as an old man. The gods, if they were just, would take the father before the son.
And if you had a younger son, Sir Davos, what would you offer him if you were in my position?
Everything and anything.
Davos stuttered as his voice broke. He ended the conversation abruptly, as it seemed the old wounds were not entirely healed, Samwell thought. The Seaworth flagship dropped its anchor in a stagnant pool of the river where skiffs could be set ashore. The last hearth was a few miles to the east as the shoreline was ready for their arrival. Her wagon and multiple horses greeted them, as well as a single northern lord, with a banner of a double-bladed black axe. Samwell felt slightly embarrassed as the lord's house had seemingly escaped him.
Lord Kerwin, it's been a few years.
Exclaimed a surprisingly jaunty Sir Davos. Samwell whispered into Gilly's ear as she observed the two lords embrace briefly.
It has, Sir Davos. My father sang your praises during the Battle of the Bastards.
It is Lord Kerwin who was worthy of praise. He pledged your house against the Boltons when most lords would have shut their doors to Sir Jon.
Davos finished as he turned to Samwell and Gilly. Davos then introduced Samwell to Lord Kerwin.
Lord Tarly is here under orders from Sir Jon. His mission is not to be discussed, but the Lord Commander has impressed upon me that whatever he needs, he is to receive.
Davos finished as Cassius Kerwin then introduced himself to Samwell.
Lord Tarly, your son has done a fine job with the restoration of the last hearth. Once Lord Eddard and I arrived with our houses in full force, he was more than prepared for our mobilization. He has more than upheld the Tarly reputation for warfare, I assure you.
You are too kind, Lord Cassius. Would you continue so by escorting Lady Tarly to her son? I will need to speak to Lord Eddard promptly, assuming he is available.
Lord Kerwin agreed quickly as he offered a handful of horses for the lords and ladies of House Tarly and House Seaworth. A brisk trot across the snow-covered plains led them to the last hearth. As it came into closer view, Samwell could identify the recent masonry work required to restore the castle to full strength. Their host briskly rode past the extended perimeter and temporary camps that housed the soldiers bearing both Stark and Cerwyn banners. Once they arrived in the vast courtyard, Samwell immediately identified Lord Eddard. He dismounted his horse and acknowledged the Liege Lord of the North.
Lord Stark, I am pleased to inform you your uncle, Lord Brandon, is alive and well.
Welcome, Lord Samwell. I am very pleased to hear of my uncle. But my father, the Lord Commander, has informed me you have sailed here with a particular motive in mind. How may I assist?
All I require is privacy and access to the library.
Precisely what your son has assumed. He is waiting for you in the library, my lord. Sir Davos, my father tells me you are intended on ferrying the Watchman's dependents to White Harbour.
Indeed we are, Lord Stark. We are ready to sail as soon as our passengers board, providing Lady Tarly can briefly see her son.
Davos requested, and Lord Eddard seemed to agree. Lady Seaworth took Gilly by her arm and encouraged her to the main hall and out of the snow. Sam drew a deep breath as he knew he would discuss matters with his son alone.
Lord Cassius, would you escort Lord Tarly to the library and see he has everything he needs? Unfortunately, the Citadel is yet to assign the last Hearth a master since the massacre here, so there would be little assistance in that regard.
Thank you, Lord Stark. I would like to brief you on my findings when you are available, at your father's request.
Sam finished and Eddard agreed. Sam briefly followed in Cassius Cerwyn's footsteps as the snow deepened to well past ankle deep. The doors to the library creaked open, just off from the main hall. As Sam had expected, his son Jon sat casually with his boots set upon the table and a pitcher within arm's reach. Cassius closed the door behind them, offering Sam and his son solitude, minus the countless books that sat upon the dusty shelves. Without fanfare, Jon emptied his goblet, offering his father no greeting upon his arrival. Sam felt as if his son was trying to provoke him. He resisted the urge that his own father, Lord Randall, would have succumbed to.
I see you survived your own ignorance. A pity your men were not so favoured by the gods.
Jon spat as he reached to refill his goblet. Sam disregarded his son's insubordination. He was envious of his son, honestly. Sam remembered his own father and how he had wished to have spoken his mind as Jon just had.
You're correct. I am the reason my men died. I would trade my life for theirs if I could, but the gods have seen fit to make me live with my mistake, as well as your own judgment.
My judgment means little, father. You made that very clear back at Castle Black.
I did, and I was wrong, just like my own father before me. I could beg your forgiveness, but somehow, I believe that would make you respect me even less.
With this admittance, Jon stumbled to his feet. He charged to his father's face and looked down upon him. Sam had just now realized his second son was now taller than him. He swallowed his emotion whole as he had during his childhood.
The Reach will be paying for that mistake for generations. You didn't just weaken our house, father, but an entire kingdom.
There comes a time in all fathers' lives where their son finally decides to challenge him. Those who deny this eventuality likely will come to physical altercations. There are few fathers who realize this ahead of time and ask for forgiveness before the worst can happen.
Is that some sort of plead for forgiveness for getting our men massacred?
It is. But if forgiveness is beyond you, son, I shall not ask for it ever again. That is more than my own father ever received, more than he ever deserved. I like to think I'm better than that.
Perhaps. I thought you would have avoided me, but here you are.
Full disclosure. Sir Jon asked me for assistance that could only be accomplished here. That is, before he set off for Castle Black.
Jon turned back to his table and his goblet. He poured his father a glass and offered it to him before responding.
I may not be wise or experienced, but all I ask is that I be heard and perhaps considered if I have earned it.
Recent events have proven you should be considered, my son.
Sir Jon and Lord Eddard have mobilised the entire north. For what reason would he retreat to Castle Black?
Lady Arya left Eastwatch in a fury. Jon relinquished command and gave chase. Something to do with the king. Jon didn't quite fill me in.
Jon chewed on this information for a while before his face ran pale. He briskly stumbled for the door and invited his father to follow. Lord Eddard observed the last Hearth's courtyard as Jon made his way beside him and whispered into his ear. Samwell saw a lot of Sir Jon in Eddard as he diligently commanded his men. Multiple horses were brought forth as Jon and Eddard were quick to mount. Lord Eddard named Cassius Kerwin in command of the last Hearth as the two young lords prepared for immediate departure. Sam approached his son with numerous questions on his mind.
Forgive me, father, but we must ride for Castle Black. Please give my best to mother. I will meet you in White Harbour along with the rest.
Jon, I hardly think it wise to...
If you trust my judgment, father, now would be a good time to wish me good fortune.
Samwell looked up to his son, mounted on his steed, reminding him of his brother Dickon. For the first time, Sam looked upon the face of a man, no longer a boy. Sam simply outstretched his hand, and his son took the firm shake as Sam pulled him down to his eye level before whispering,
First in battle.
And the last to leave.
Jon replied before kicking his horse into a gallop alongside Lord Eddard Stark.